Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Dom from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. So, if you're at all familiar with Canon Telephoto lenses, then you're probably well aware of these two telephoto zooms, the 70-200 2.8 and the 100-400 f4.5 to 5.6. These are two super popular lenses used for wildlife, for sports, and plenty of other things. And I know that there are tons of Canon photographers out there who call these lenses their workhorses, especially the 70-200. But in recent years, Canon has built a foundation in the mirrorless market with a growing line of RF mount cameras. And now following this, we're starting to see them slowly roll out RF versions of these old EF lenses. So I'm taking this video to focus on what's different between these two sets of telephoto zooms, between the EF 70-200 and 100-400 and their RF counterparts, the RF 70-200 and the RF 100-500. So there are a couple of baseline differences that actually apply to both sets of lenses that I want to get out of the way first, and then I'm going to talk about each lens specifically. Also, I should mention that I've listed the exact specs of all four of these lenses in the description for reference. So getting the obvious stuff out of the way, EF lenses were designed for DSLR camera bodies, and the flange distance in the EF system, which is the distance between the rear element and the sensor, is much greater than that of a mirrorless system. So since that flange distance is much smaller in the RF system, that allows Canon to make these new RF lenses really compact yet still maintain the same apertures. This also reflects in the weight of these lenses. These RF telephoto zooms are extremely lightweight, and each is significantly more lightweight than its EF counterpart. And this is also due to the greater freedom of design that the RF system allows for. Also, there are probably some new build materials at play here as well that can account for this. Okay, next we have a few modernized updates to these lenses. Canon said goodbye focus window, hello control ring. Canon must have thought that ye old focus window was becoming a bit antiquated, so they ditched it. But in place of that, we get an assignable control ring, which is present on the entire RF line of lenses. Aesthetically, Canon kept the signature off-white finish for the exterior of the lens, but it is a tiny bit tanner compared to the EFs. Both the 70-200 and 100-500 are now made of a more smooth and lightweight material that is nice and sleek, but it feels a bit plasticky, and they certainly don't feel as rugged as their EF predecessors. Okay, the last difference between these two sets of lenses that I want to talk about before talking about each lens individually is manually focusing. On both of these RF lenses, and I'm actually pretty sure that this is true of the entire RF line, but manually focusing is done electronically, or more officially called focused by wire. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but all you have to know right now is that on the EF lenses, you were actually moving the elements in the lens when you were throwing the focus ring. And in a focus by wire system, it's done electronically via a program that's connected to the focus ring. Okay, so those are the changes that apply to both sets of lenses. Now I'm going to get a bit more specific about each focal length, starting with these 70-200s. Okay, right off the bat, the biggest difference is that the RF 70-200 zooms using a telescoping system, where the EF version zooms internally. So there are ups and downs to both systems. For example, the telescoping system in the RF 70-200 allows it to be much more lightweight and collapses to be a much shorter form factor. But telescoping lenses are generally considered to be less durable and more prone to letting dust and debris enter the lens. So when the RF lens is collapsed, it's significantly shorter. But when it's fully extended, it's actually a bit longer than the EF. Also, the layout of the zoom and focus rings are reversed. The RF 70-200 uses the area towards the end of the lens for the zoom ring, and they put the focus ring much closer to the flange of the lens and made it much thinner. So this also has to do with the focus by wire system. So since this focus ring isn't actually moving anything mechanically inside the lens, it can pretty much go anywhere, and that's a huge space saver for this lens. So let's take a quick look at a couple of tests that I did with each of these 70-200s, but I'll tell you right now that I wouldn't be expecting any major striking differences between these two lenses performance-wise. The one real improvement I can tell in the RF glass is the stabilization. It does perform a bit more aggressively than the EF, but seriously, other than that, I think we're going to find that most of the changes made to these new lenses were build related. The optics in these lenses have been changed around quite a bit. There are actually 6 fewer elements in the RF 70-200 than the EF, and I guess that's kind of a feat in and of itself. Okay, so now moving on to the differences made from the EF 100-400 and the RF 100 to 500. So obviously the first difference is the extra 100 millimeters in the RF lens. And I understand that this can't be a true one-to-one lens comparison if the focal lengths are different, but in my interpretation, this is Canon's version of the EF 100 to 400. They were just able to add an extra 100 millimeters, so they did. Size-wise, the RF lens is a bit longer than the EF lens when fully collapsed, and much longer when fully zoomed. But again, with the longer maximum focal length, that's not surprising. They kept the same smooth, tight resistance ring for the zoom barrel, and this is sort of a small thing, but I at least thought that it would get better with the RF lens, but it's actually worse. When that ring is loose, if you point the lens down, the barrel slides down, which can be kind of annoying. So other than all of the differences I've previously mentioned, Canon actually stayed pretty true to the original design when making this RF 100 to 500. In other words, the RF 100 to 500 doesn't look like a completely different lens from this one, like the 70 to 200 did. So with that being said, let's look at some of the same tests with the 100 to 400 and the 100 to 500. Okay, so I think I've covered basically everything that's new with these RF telephoto zooms. And now I'm gonna hit you with the classic what I like and what I don't like about these changes. Okay, so let's start out with what I like. I absolutely love how compact and lightweight these lenses are, and that's absolutely the biggest plus of these new RF telephoto zooms. If you were carrying around both of these lenses on you for a long day, that would definitely be something that you and your back would appreciate. The control ring is also a great addition, simply because it just gives you another option for controlling exposure that's not through the camera. Lastly, the improved stabilization is a really great thing too. Okay, so let's move on to what I don't like so much. This is kind of a disappointment for me, and I understand that it's probably not as big of a deal for many other people, but these lenses are focused by wire, and I just really don't like that. This is like one of those programs that's just too smart for its own good, and it can get really frustrating because sometimes it just straight up doesn't respond correctly. Call me old school, but I think I absolutely need to feel what I'm doing to the lens while manually focusing, and a focus by wire system completely takes that away. The next big change that I'm not too fond of in the 70 to 200 is that it's telescoping. Yes, it decreases the overall size and weight drastically, but I just don't think that the zoom action on a telescoping lens will ever be the same as an internal zoom. And it makes the lens much more susceptible to getting dust sucked up into the barrel, which is something you cannot do anything about. Lastly, and this is really only something that time will reveal, but these RF lenses just don't feel as durable as their EF predecessors. And these are typically the type of lenses that get banged around a lot, so that really means something. Maybe my mind is just sort of being tricked because this is so much more lightweight than the original, but I just have a feeling that if you used both of these lenses the exact same amount for, let's say, 5 years, the RF lens would show way more signs of wear. But like I said, that's something that only time could tell, and I could be totally wrong. Okay, so that's gonna wrap it up on my video on what's new with these RF, that's not one. So that's gonna wrap up my video on what's new with these RF telephoto zooms. So if you have any questions about these two lenses, or if you think that I should have talked about something in this video that I didn't, drop a comment in the comment section below. Also, let me know if you'd like to see a similar video to this one, but comparing the RF primes to the EF primes. Anyways, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, you can literally like it down below by hitting the like button. And if you're not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay tuned in for more of our weekly content. And we'll see you in the next one. We'll be right back.